Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with a mix of Just No HOA and Entitled People's Stories. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to join our awesome community, and without wasting any more time, let's dive right into the stories. The first one was posted by user a homeowner Phil, and it is titled HOA Karen raided my house for toilet paper, disinfectant and hand sanitizer. This happened over a year ago during the height of the pandemic in mid-2020. I am 29 male and I am a homeowner. I bought a house in 2019 from my uncle because he was well set and wanted to retire to his second home by a lake. Before buying the house, my uncle warned me that the neighborhood has an HOA. But it only affects those who joined it, obviously, and my uncle did not. But the price my uncle was offering was half the home's value, and I could not pass up the offer. So I bought a house in an HOA neighborhood that was not part of the HOA. Right after I moved in, I got a knock on the door. And when I opened it, I was greeted by an older woman with short graying blonde hair and face covered in thick makeup. She was holding a welcome to the neighborhood gift basket. She introduced herself as the president of the HOA and then asked to come in so she could help me fill out some forms. I knew what she was trying to do because my uncle warned me that she did this to every new homeowner in the area who was not a part of the HOA. By the way guys, you know what I was just thinking? Maybe in like 20 or 30 years time, there will be fairy tales about HOAs and how you should not talk to the crazy HOA president. And nowadays in fairy tales, it's obviously the big bad wolf or something that you should not talk to. So I quickly and bluntly stated I was not going to join her HOA, and her smile quickly disappeared and she started saying that I did not have a choice as all new homeowners are mandated to join. I told her I knew in advance that that was a total lie and that I will not be paying any dues or fines. And I will be ready to call a lawyer if I have to. She called me a thorn to the neighborhood and said she would be back. Though we did not speak to each other for some time. I expected her to start sending me fines in the mail or something, but the most I usually got were letters stating that my grass was getting too tall or that my driveway needed sweeping. Those never bothered me because they are normal home chores and need to be done regularly anyway. However, several neighbors that were on the HOA site made it clear that they did not like me because I did not join, just like my uncle. I said that was fine, we are neighbors but we don't have to be friends. They said that was fine too because I'm an outsider and they will never accept me until I join the HOA. Later, in early 2020, I got word from a friend that people were starting to buy a lot of disinfectant, toilet paper and hand sanitizer in mass. I decided the best option was to order these things online. I got 8 big 12 packs of toilet paper, a case of 20 bottles of hand sanitizer, 3 boxes of disposable latex gloves, a couple of boxes of disposable face masks and a case of 20 large cans of name brand disinfectant spray. I set for the delivery to be signed for only as I did not trust anyone not to steal my packages if they were just left on my porch. When the packages were delivered, several neighbors saw me getting lots of toilet paper and some other packages that contained the other stuff. And just because I'm a paranoid guy, I still bought more of the same stuff when I saw it in stores. Like those small cheap 4 packs of toilet paper or off-brand disinfectant sprays. I bought them because I had a feeling that some friends or family might need some soon. And also, I was right. As expected, toilet paper, disinfectant and sanitizer pretty much disappeared from store shelves for miles around. And people were fighting over hoarding it. Meanwhile, I've got a very generous supply that I still have not come close to using up. Though word of my supply got around fast when people started needing some. A friend of mine ran out of toilet paper and had no hand sanitizer, so I gave him a couple of the generic 4 packs of TP and a bottle of sanitizer at my door. A few family members ran out too and I shared with them as well. They were all extremely grateful, but I ended up with several neighbors knocking on my door, asking to buy my supply or wanting handouts. But I refused and said I only gave some of what I had away to friends and family. They made it pretty clear to me before that we would never be friends since I refused to join the HOA, so if I were to give some to one neighbor, they would all want my supplies. And then I would run out really fast as well. They did not like this and harassed me several times from the sidewalk, but I just ignored them. Later, the HOA Karen showed up at my door and told me several neighbors had run out of all the items that this post is about. Then said she was not asking but demanding that I share my stock with my neighbors to set a good example. I told her to buzz off because that had nothing to do with me. I may be a jerk, but I'm a well-prepared jerk, and I've read her HOA bylaws online, so even if I was a member of her HOA, which I was not, I would not have to give up my stock either way. She left while yelling at me that one day I would regret not being a good neighbor or being part of her HOA. The next time I went to work, I was notified around noon by the cameras I had at my house that there was a thief breaking into my home. I could see video of them on my smartphone and it looked like a woman in a spandex suit with her face covered by a hockey mask. I called the police immediately and was allowed to clock out at work so I could rush home. Right around the time I got there, the cops were walking HOA Karen out in handcuffs to a police cruiser. She had broken into my home by using a crowbar to force open the back door and was tossing all of my toilet paper and any other supplies she could grab out into my backyard, where her kids were picking it up and bagging it. I pressed charges and HOA Karen got 6 months in jail and probation. HOA Karen's husband called me to apologize for his wife and told me that he had been planning a divorce for a while because this is not the first time she's been in trouble with the law, and CPS got involved too because she was using her kids to help steal from me. So he was gonna file for full custody in the divorce. HOA Karen did not return and someone new was elected HOA president in her place. Her husband did not move and I saw him from time to time. Also, there are no hard feelings between us. And yes, he did get full custody of his kids because his wife had a longer history with the law than I thought. We are sort of friends now too, as we have occasionally had a beer together and he helped me replace my back door that his ex broke. I am making this post more than a year later because I just saw HOA Karen again. I was visiting some friends in another city and saw her working at the local supermarket there, bagging groceries. As soon as we saw each other, she obviously recognized me because she scowled and refused to look at me again the entire time I was there. Karma is a real witch, isn't it, Karen? And Ripe stars, seriously, what is more satisfying than an awful HOA president getting exactly what they deserve? To be honest with you, I just enjoy these HOA stories the absolute most, although the revenge stories about farmers and others are also great. I was forced to work in a place for a year while they paid nothing to me. Things did not go well. And by the way guys, no, this is not the story that we read 3 or 4 days ago. This is a different one, I promise. Hey everyone, I wanted to share a story that happened quite a long time ago now. In my country there is mandatory military service for all men. Now, before going to the story, I was a young person who was struggling often with depression because of heavy bullying I went through. I had taken antidepressants multiple times before and was barely getting myself together at that time. Every doctor told me that I won't go to the military because of my psychological issues. Now, when I went through check where they decide if I am fit for the military or not, I was also pretty sure they were going to deny me and let me know. When I reached the psychiatrist doctor office though, and I told him about my past, the last part went like this.
Well, that happened in the past, didn't it?
I guess so.
Then you're all fine. All good. Next.
I was shocked since there were multiple red flags on that paper. I ended up taking the alternative option, which was doing alternative military service, which is social work at some elderly house, helping them. And by the way guys, I'm not sure where this story is from, but we had the exact same type of either military service or alternative service in Germany almost a decade ago. Anyway, I didn't want to go do the military service, I wanted to keep my dorm and I had my religious reasons. Most of my friends who told me their stories were completely fine and I didn't think too much. So I was set to work in an elderly clubbing house where elders had their club meetings, did some artistic work or just talked. I helped them out. Below the house was also a place where they took care of poor children whose parents could not afford a more proper caretaking place, so they dropped them there. Many of them were with special needs. When I talked with the director, I told her that I was fine to work there, but I need to do some IT work as a side because the amount country will be paying me, minimum wage, won't be enough to survive. Note that the country paid it, not the place I worked at. They got me for free. I only asked like 3 to 4 hours per week to do programming work quietly in my office, also adding a note that work was 40 hours a week. The director seemed understanding, a young woman who was promoted just before I came, red flag, and said it was fine. The job included doing some physical work, helping out with computer-related stuff, teaching the elderly how to use a computer, the last one being love and hate relationship, and a few other tasks. Or at least that is what they told me at first. The reality was something different. They started abusing the crap out of me, making me do things I was not trained or ready for. Some of them they did not tell me at all and then just said that this is also my job now. I had asked the previous person who had worked in my place about it and it had been a very different story and a lot less responsibilities. I had at least a double amount of responsibilities than the previous one had and half of them I was not comfortable with. And that included taking care of kids, taking care of any elderly and occasionally doing some nasty stuff. I once had to clean a room of elderly who had smoked like 30 years in his bathroom. It was disgusting in so many ways and had to take so many breaks to not just puke. And on top of that, the director had decided that I spent too much time on my computer working on other things, so he told me that I cannot use my computer while at work or if it is not for their work. I ignored that and did my work anyway, just their stuff took 2 times longer time because I needed to earn my living some other ways too. And while I tried my best, my director all the time told me how disappointed he was in me and missed the previous worker. He came to me all the time telling me that I did not do enough and that many others didn't seem that happy as well. Honestly, I think it was bullcrap because most of them, and especially elderly, were very happy about me and my work. I even cried to one coworker who could do nothing about it. However, as I worked there and I got more blamed, my stress levels began to skyrocket and I asked from my doctor to give antidepressants to deal with it somehow. I had moments when I cried and panicked. The worst part was I could not quit, because I was forced to stay for a year and finish it. I felt like a slave. I honestly regretted taking this on and should have just gone to the military. And now here comes the big part. After less than half a year working there, I was invited once again to the office. The director did her traditional speech of not being happy about me. Then she said that she decided to give me a minimum amount of vacation days because of that. Normally one could get up to 25 days of vacation if I was good, but they could reduce it to a minimum of 15, which she did. She then proceeded to tell me that if she wanted, she had the right to get me swapped out for someone else for the poor work I did. At that point, my stress level was so high that I stopped caring. I was almost preparing to stay there remaining over half a year. But as I walked out of there, something clicked the first time. Rights. What rights do I have? What can I do? Do I have any right to get swapped out? I did some research and for the first time found a way how I could get out of this hellhole. During the vacation, I scheduled a time for both psychiatrist and therapist time. I paid for the meeting to get it as soon as possible. I told both of them the same story and said that I am super stressed and cannot really take this anymore and that I already took in antidepressants to handle it. When they asked what they can do, I said that I needed to get evaluated again, but I needed proof and evaluation from them that I was not fit for it and should be let go. They both agreed to write one. After that, I hurried to request a recheck because of the change in my mental state. They were about to go on a 3-month vacation and the last date for it was tomorrow in a different city. I took it and took the first ride to that city. In there I was invited straight to the psychiatrist's room, who was now a different doctor compared to the last time. The doctor read through the reports and all the information, asking only some questions. every detail about this place I was working in was also down there. And as some time passed, he quoted one of the last messages on the paper, "Well, go have your freedom then," and gave me freedom from alternative service and military service as well, deeming me unfit for it. I walked home and was almost crying. They told me not to go there again and everything will be dealt with them. I was free. There was a moment after another half a year when one elderly called me. I had accidentally given him my real number and asked for help. I refused the help because I didn't work there anymore. However, the elder told me that it is really bad because even half a year later, the place I worked at did not get a replacement for me and worked with one less person. They supposedly had hands full of stuff because every documentation, paper and other stuff were now done by the actual workers and the country refused to give them a new one, at least until my official time would be over. I gotta admit, that felt damn good. And just for your interest, I'm now pretty good writing books, and while depression can whisper behind my back sometimes, it is nothing to really worry about. And I gotta say guys, in this story I not only feel bad for the OP because obviously he had to work in a terrible place, but also for the elderly people because I know especially in Germany there is a huge lack of, what do you call them, social workers for the elderly, basically people who take care of elderly people in these places. I'm not sure if there's also a huge lack of those people in other countries, but especially in Germany it is a huge problem. And the next one is titled, "Don't want to give me access? Here you have hundreds of emails." I am currently having, and with no plans on ending this, a petty revenge with a coworker now. We have changed the system and I need to document all the incidents that are happening with the customers. My coworker plainly said to me that he won't give me access to the new system because
you don't need it, and to be fair, don't know why you had access to the old one.
And despite all my examples of what I need it for, he has not given me an account. Cue the petty revenge. Every time there is an incident, I send him an email. Sweet short email with the case number and a brief description, copy-paste essentially, won't take me longer than 20 seconds to write it. After that, I've set an automatic email so that every 24 hours the email goes unanswered, a new email is sent up with a follow-up. Any news on this? I started on Wednesday, but with around 30 cases a day, by my calculations he already should have around 270 emails, 90 original cases plus the reminders. I hope that I will get the account next week, or sadly his inbox will be saturated soon with so many emails about something he could have easily avoided. And guys, I don't know about you, but who doesn't love some petty office revenge? We all had that one coworker who was just so obnoxious or unfair that a little bit of petty revenge never hurts. And the next one is titled, "I had unknown language skills and it saved me from some horrible problems with a coworker." I worked in an office where I tried very hard to work well with others. The company had fair hiring practices, which was one of the reasons I liked them. Social justice parents. One week I had a bad GI infection. That meant I had to spend more time than usual in the bathroom without much warning, but I told my boss and she was very supportive because I came in. I was a person who looked as vanilla as can be, but because of my background I deliberately joined the only fraternity on campus that welcomed international members. That had an interesting advantage that would pay off 2 decades later. You see, members of our chapter spoke a language that I had taken a few weeks off in 4th grade, not very much, but enough words stuck, but enough basic ones to sometimes allow me to understand basic sentences. Some of my fraternity brothers who spoke this language fluently put together a handbook of phrases in the language which would let us know for sure when they were insulting us. We got back at them by giving them nicknames based on the dirty words they had translated for us, which they found funny as heck. Right. So the other thing you should know is that my job was a white-collar job that required me to dictate memos or take minutes of meetings, which meant that I would tape these meetings with a mini recorder and send the tapes of a typing pool for typing, after which I edited them or approved them when needed. I tended to keep the mini recorder with me because we sometimes had unexpected meetings. As I was indisposed in our quite large restroom waiting for my GI to settle down, a number of individuals who spoke this language came into the bathroom and started chatting. When I heard my boss's name and familiar slurs, I pulled out the recorder and started taping. It turns out that one of the speakers was a person on our staff who felt very self-entitled, not entirely without reason, and was a bit lazy. He underperformed constantly but had a high-level company connection, so could not be touched. Thinking that by speaking in his language he could say anything he wanted about the individual, he went into a diatribe that mostly went past me. But it was clear he was talking about our boss in very pejorative and sexist ways. One of the other speakers tried diligently to shut him up because he was a kind person defending the boss, etc., but that only enraged the insulter and made him go on and on. This really pissed me off because it was clear his attitude was based mainly on sexism and the feeling that he should be boss instead. But she was in fact much more qualified for her position than this waste of space. It took me a long time to do something about this because I don't like making waves or unnecessary meanness on the job. But then my boss started getting internal hate mail slid under her door, which she found very disturbing, so I spoke to her privately one afternoon after he had left for the day. I played her the tape, translated where I could, and gave it to her. She took it to her boss. She did not take disciplinary action, which might have meant fighting his insider. Instead, she did the one thing he could not fight. She started calling him in for meetings about his project statuses 15 minutes before he dared to leave for the day, which would then last 2 to 3 hours. We were exempt employees, so he was stuck. He hated one-on-one meetings with her because in them she could review errors he had made, which played havoc with his self-image. Interestingly, after a while he started changing his behavior, working harder and more carefully, which shortened his meetings as he improved. The defending staff member was rewarded for his behavior at the time, which he was pleased at but never understood why. Until after I retired. I called him one day because I had heard that the problematic employee had left the company. As I signed off the call, I used a popular phrase in the language. He said, "Wait, how much language do you speak?" I told him, "More than, badly acting, ever realized." He then got it, he just laughed and laughed and laughed. And indeed guys, it can definitely pay off if you know at least bits of a few languages. Especially when you have toxic coworkers who love to insult others in their native language. And by the way, if you have watched until here, I would be super happy if you could post some star emojis in the comments to show me that you are a loyal Ripestar. Thank you so much for watching, and now let's move on to the next story. And the next one is titled, "Coworker claims my work as her own, guess she loses all her work." My coworker L is known for being rude to guests, other coworkers and people in general. I work in a restaurant. My managers have every waiter/waitress roll a certain amount of silverware before they are allowed to clock out. Rolling silverware is basically putting a knife, fork and spoon in a napkin and rolling the napkin around it so you get a silverware burrito. Sometimes when there's not enough to do, one of us hostesses will be sent to the back to roll silverware. I was the unlucky one and was sent back to roll for 2 hours. I had rolled a decent pile, about 6 or 7, when Elle says,
"I'm gonna take these because I already wrote some,"
and takes my silverware to her pen. I was chill with it because the servers had to roll silverware whilst hostesses did not. A few minutes later, when I had about 10 pieces of silverware rolled, Elle came over and grabbed it without saying anything, not a thank you or a "may I?" Nothing. I was pissed. I knew it didn't hurt me, but she could have at least asked or said thanks. So I hatched a plan. I rolled 20 more pieces of silverware and put them in her pan, filling it up. Then, when nobody was looking, I took the silverware up front and delivered it to the hostesses. The silverware pans usually have a paper with the name of the person who rolled it, but this one didn't, so nobody could take credit for it. I waited until she finally noticed it was gone. She started cussing and questioning everybody. Elle came up and said,
"Do you know who took my pen?"
in the most annoyed voice. And I, the pure and innocent hostess, simply said, "No, I was here rolling silverware. I didn't see anything." You know guys, when you're at a workplace, that is actually one of the things that I hate the most, when you do work and others take credit for it. Has that ever happened to you? Let us know in the comments. And the last one is titled, "Manager regrets harassing coworkers when he becomes the butt of his own joke." A commenter on one of my posts reminded me about this, so I thought I would see if it fit here. Restaurant I worked at when I was young had a slick manager. He looked like something out of a bad 70s porno movie, slick back black hair, pencil mustache, still wore bell bottoms and wide open shirt with major chest hair and gold chains. Think Saturday Night Fever meets John Holmes, and he had a custom van complete with bed and bar. He was harmless but full of himself, and he was a bit too off color when the younger girls were around. There was one particular blonde waitress he had the hots for. He thought the way to pick up girls was with humor, bad humor, dirty jokes to be exact. This waitress was a little friendlier with me than some of the other guys. I always thought it was because I had a long time steady girlfriend and did not come on to her. Anyway, one night we are not super busy, but steady, he is throwing jokes her way and she's rolling her eyes out loud. I asked her jokingly if she wanted me to beat him up. She said no, one day he will get his. End of the night, we are near my station in the back. I am talking to the waitress and porno manager comes through the swinging doors. He saunters over and decided he's going to use his best joke on her. He asks her,
"Why does a dog lick its balls?"
He looked at her waiting for an answer and reaction, but I heard him too. In fact, about 15 of us heard him. Then, without missing a beat, I asked him, "Why do you lick your dog's balls?" His jaw dropped, he audibly sucked in air, and he had 15 teenaged restaurant workers laughing at him. You could see the red rise in his face. He stuttered a bit, and then to top it off, he looks at the blonde waitress that was the target of his affections, and she says, "Well, we are waiting." Stick a fork in him, he was done. We all had tears in our eyes from laughing. Porno manager didn't change his style, but he did not try his foul jokes around us anymore. Like she predicted, he got his. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.